Good morning, kindergarten. Happy Friday. Welcome to our last lesson story time of the week. Today we're going to read 3 chapters so we can end this awesome adventure with Jack and Annie today. So yesterday we left off, we're on chapter number 7. So today we're going to read 8, 9, and 10 and find out what happens as we leave this adventure in the Civil War with Jack and Annie. We know that they have met the famous nurse Clara Barton. Yesterday they were on the battlefield helping the wounded soldiers, and they were helping a wounded drummer boy back to the field hospital. Let's see what this drummer boy has to say and if they learned something important from him as well. Sit back, relax, and get cozy for rest and story time. Chapter 8, Brothers. Clara Barton turned the wagon around. She helped Jack and Annie lift the drummer boy into the back. The soldier said he has a heat stroke, Annie told Clara. His name is John. The boy lay down next to the sleeping Confederate soldier. He does have a heat stroke. The other boy has a high fever. We have to get him to the hospital at once, Clara said. Can you two stay in the back and I do as I tell you? Sure, said Jack and Annie at once. Clara wet 2 clean cloths with water from Jack's canteen. Here, gently press these cloths against their face. This will help them to cool off, Clara told them. She gave the cloths to Jack and Annie. Then she went to the front of the wagon and climbed in. The wagon started moving forward. Jack and Annie patted the soldier's face with the damp cloth. Jack looked at the young men lying side by side. The two seemed far more alike than different. In another time and place, these 2 men might have been friends, Jack thought. Finally, after the wagon arrived at the field hospital, the Confederate soldier was put onto a stretcher and carried off to a tent. 2 of the soldiers wearing bandages put the drummer boy out on a stretcher. Can you stay with John for a while? Clara asked Jack and Annie. Sure, said Jack. Try to bring down his fever. A nurse will come to give you an ice pack to press against his skin. Find me when his fever goes lower. The drummer boy was carried into the empty tent, and Jack and Annie followed. John was put onto a cot, and a nurse filled up the rags and a bucket with some ice. Jack and Annie were left alone with the boy. Jack wrapped up some ice in a rag and pressed it to the boy's head, neck, and arms. Annie fanned the air to try to keep him cool and to keep away the flies. Jack was feeling very hot himself as he pressed against the ice pack on his own face. Then he looked up Drummer Boy in the Civil War book. He read it out loud for Annie. The Civil War was the last war to use a drummer boy. The drum beat was used to give the orders to the soldiers. The different beats of the drum would tell them when it was time to eat, how to march, and how to fight. On the smoky battlefield, the boys' drumming could help the soldiers find one another and keep working together, even when they couldn't see each other. So see, he's not just playing music, he's actually giving them orders and talking to them through the drum beat. Isn't that cool? Wow, said Jack. He closed the book and pulled out his notebook to write down a note. Drummer boy, really important job. Suddenly, John started shouting. Jack looked up from his notebook. The drummer boy was still asleep, but he was waving his arms up and down as if he was having a nightmare. Annie shook his arm. Wake up, John. You're okay. Wake up, wake up. The drummer boy opened his eyes. It's okay. You were having a bad dream. You're safe now. You'll see your family soon. No, 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 John shouted. He sounded scared and frantic. I have to go back to the battlefield now. No, you don't. You don't have to fight anymore, John. You can go home and be safe, Annie said. No, they need me. They need my drum, John told them. He sounded more and more upset. Jack thought about the list in his pocket. He remembered one of the things to follow said, put aside your own feelings. Okay, John, you can go back as soon as you feel better. Jack, he'll get hurt. I'm afraid for him, said Annie. Me too, Annie, but we have to put our feelings aside. Remember, we have to follow the list. Oh, okay, she said sadly. She looked at John. If you want to fight again in the Civil War, you can, if that's what you really want to do, Annie said. Thank you, the boy whispered. You know, you are the bravest kid that I've ever met, Jack told him. So there's John, the drummer boy in the bed, and Jack and Annie caring to him and tending to him, and he does look a lot like Jack, doesn't he? The drummer boy smiled. You know, you remind me of my little brother, he said. You look like my big brother, said Jack. Except I don't have a big brother. Actually, I don't have any brothers. All of a sudden, they all started laughing. The drummer boy had a nice, soft laugh. He laid his head back against a pillow to close his eyes, and within a moment he was sleeping peacefully again, with a smile on his lips. Annie felt his forehead. "Hey, Jack, his fever's gone down. Let's go tell Clara." She left the tent, and Jack got up slowly to follow her. When he reached the entrance, he turned around and looked back at the drummer boy. The shadows fell across his calm, sleeping face. It was very strange. Jack barely knew him, but he felt like they really were brothers. Listening to the cannon fire in the distance, Jack was afraid for the boy. Will he be okay? Will he go home to his family again? Jack had all these thoughts in his head. "Good luck, John. Be safe," Jack said softly. And with a sad and heavy heart, Jack stepped out into the warm evening air. Aww. I hope he'll be okay in the war. Let's see if we find out. Chapter 9. Don't Give Up. "Annie," called Jack. "Over here, Jack," she answered. Jack saw two figures standing in the twilight. He walked over to Annie and Clara. They were standing in the distance of the battlefield. They could see bright lights flashing against the dark blue sky, cannon shells exploding. Every time you see a flash, you know that a shell may have hurt someone or taken a life. It's awful. "That is awful," said Annie. "Yes, it really is," said Clara. "A whole world can vanish in one flash. All of a young man's joys and sorrows, all of his memories. It is terribly sad." "This is a cruel war," said Annie. "Well, all wars are cruel," said Clara. "People feel they must fight for what they believe in, but soon they learn that war is not about glory or fame. It's about misery and pain and sadness." "It makes me miss my mom and dad. It really makes me miss them," said Annie. Annie sounded tired and homesick, and she lost all of her cheerfulness. "I think it's time for you to go home now," said Clara. Jack thought about all the wounded men who needed food and water and kindness and comfort. "No, we can't go home now. We have to stay. We can't give up yet. The list says don't give up," said Jack. Jack pulled out the list to show Clara. "Oh, yes, I see one of my nurses has written down my list of things I say. Let me add one more thing to the list. Do not forget the ones who love you." Jack sighed. He was homesick too. "Clara, can we keep the list?" "Of course you can. You don't have to work in a hospital to follow my words. My words work in all of life, no matter where you go. Take them with you." "Thank you," said Jack. So there they are. They're going to keep her special list, so that way they can always follow it. Don't give up, be brave, be happy. Those are good lists to follow. "Many thanks to both of you," said Clara. "You were great helpers." "You were a great teacher," said Annie. "Goodbye," said Clara. "Be very careful going home." "Oh, we will," said Jack and Annie. "Goodbye." The sun was setting as they walked away from the camp. They could still hear the boom of cannons shouting in the distance. They also heard the soldiers singing a song around the campfire. "We're tenting tonight on the old campground. Give us a song of cheer. Our weary hearts a song of home and of friends that we love so dear." Jack and Annie walked through the darkening field, and by the time they got to the woods, the stars were out in the sky. They climbed the rope ladder to the treehouse, and Annie grabbed the Pennsylvania book. "Wait a second," Jack said. He looked out the window. He couldn't see anything below, but the soldier's song was carrying into the warm and starry night. "Many are the hearts that are weary tonight, wishing for the war to cease." That means to end. As Jack listened, he thought of Clara, the slave, the Confederate boy, the drummer boy, and all the men who were fighting in this war. "War is not a game. It is not a game," said Jack. "Many are the hearts looking for the right, the dawn of peace." The song ended and the cannon fire stopped. The night was quiet and they could hear the frogs. "Are you ready, Jack?" Annie whispered. "I'm ready." She carefully pointed to the picture and said, "I really wish we could go home." The wind started to blow and the treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. Last chapter. Home, sweet home. There was a booming in the distance. Jack opened his eyes and caught his breath. "Is that cannon fire? Are we not home yet?" "It's okay, Jack. We're home. Home, sweet home," came Annie's voice. Oh man, Jack said at once. They were home, back in the Frog Creek woods, wearing their own comfy clothes again. The noise he heard was just the thunder, and in that moment, Jack loved thunder. The raindrops were thumping against the treehouse. Come on, Annie, we better hurry. Wait, don't forget, leave the list here. It's the first special writing we need to help Morgan. Something to follow. Jack carefully took the list out of his backpack and put it on the floor next to Morgan's letter. I wonder how the list is going to help save Camelot, Jack said. I don't know, Annie answered. But you know what's the weird thing about getting the list? I don't think we could have taken it home when we got it. I think we actually had to follow it, to live it first. Jack nodded. Annie was right. He didn't think so at first, but she was right. Them staying was very important. Hang on a second, I see another note here, said Annie. She picked up a piece of paper that fell on the floor. It said, come back on Wednesday. I guess that's when Morgan needs us to come back for the next special writing, said Annie. That's in 3 days. Let's go home now and rest. He started walking down the ladder while Annie followed behind him. When they stepped onto the ground, the rain began to pour down from the sky. Run, Annie, said Jack. They ran through the woods, down their street, and down to their porch, into their nice, dry, and cozy house. They found their parents reading in the living room. Mom, Dad, oh, we're so glad to see you. Well, we're glad to see you too, said their dad, sounding a bit puzzled. Go put on some dry clothes, said their mom happily. Jack and Annie started walking up to their rooms. Halfway up the stairs, Jack stopped. Mom, Dad, I have a question. Did anybody in our family ever fight in the Civil War? Their dad looked surprised. Why, yes, one of your great-great-great-grandfather. He actually was a drummer boy. What? Oh, man, said Jack. What was his name, Dad? Asked Annie. His name was John. John? What happened to John? Was he hurt in the war? No, he actually grew up and became a teacher. He had 5 children and lived a happy life. Jack and Annie jumped up and shouted with joy. That's great news, said Annie. Really great news. Thank you, Dad. Thanks for telling us. Sure, their dad said, smiling, not knowing why they were so curious in the first place. As Jack hurried up to his room, he could hear the song of the Civil War in his head. Give us a song of cheer, a weary heart on a song's way home. The end. So isn't that amazing? That drummer boy that they helped in this Civil War turned out to be their great-great-great-grandfather. That's probably why Jack looks so much like him. So it's so nice to know that this story had a happy ending, because we know that thanks to Jack and Annie and Clara helping him, he healed up, he went back to the war ended, he became a teacher, he had a happy life and had 5 children. And then those children had children and children and children until along came Jack and Annie. So isn't that so amazing? It almost gives you like goosebumps to know what an exciting end to this story there was. So I am pretty happy to hear that. So I'm so glad this story had a happy ending. Let me know what you thought about Civil War on a Sunday. Next week, we're going to read book number 22. We'll let you know what that is on Monday, because I don't currently have the book with me at the moment. It's upstairs, so that's okay. I will keep it a little surprise and see you on Monday what book number 22 is going to be. I hope you enjoyed today's Rest and Story Time. Have a fabulous weekend, and I will see you all on Monday. Bye-bye.